This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you an exclusive interview with Dr. Bibek Debroy, Chairman, Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council.
सर, बजट को आप कैसे देखते हैं? आपने मेंशन किया था कि कुछ इम्प्लिसिट इंडिकेशंस हैं इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में बजट को लेकर. आप कैसे देखते हैं आफ्टर द बजट डिक्लेरेशन?
I think the budget should be seen more in terms of the vision it sets out. Just as last year's budget set out a vision, this year's budget also sets out a vision for India to accomplish when India celebrates its 100th Independence Day. It's a template for the next 25 years. One should not look at the budget from the point of view of what it does for me in terms of reducing my slabs or reducing my tax rates, because there must be stability and certainty in tax policy. And I think what this budget does is it talks about inclusive welfare, which is empowering people, and it sets out an environment for growth, which means automatically when that growth happens, there will be jobs, there will be employment.
Dr. Debroy, you've been advocating simplification of tax codes and tax rules in your recent pronouncements. Has this budget gone further in that direction?
No, look, there are the rates and there is the processes. Now, so far as indirect taxes is concerned, that's under the purview of the GST Council. So you're talking about direct taxes. Substantive reform of direct taxes. Also, in passing, I should mention that the taxation of agricultural income in any case under the Constitution is under the province of the states. So far as the rest of it is concerned, the big question here in terms of simplifying is removal of exemptions. And I need to quickly point out that quite often the discussion is only in terms of corporate tax rates. But the entire unincorporated segment of enterprise actually pays personal income taxes. So whether it is on personal income taxes or corporate taxes, what is needed is elimination of exemptions. Should we have it? Yes, we should have it. Was this budget the time to do it? Probably not. And the reason I'm saying this is if you removed all exemptions, some segments would probably, not across the board, but some segments would probably see an increase in effective tax rates. Given that the growth recovery is still not very robust, I think expecting it in this budget was unrealistic. But yes, as a goal, it should happen. I'm certain it will happen.
So you're sure directionally we will move towards removal of exemption even in the individual?
I think so. What has happened is for some categories there is already an option.
Correct.
But the option for opting for that route of removal of exemptions has not been very attractive. So I'm sure that once the growth recovery is a bit more certain, by the time we come to the next budget, we will be in a position to talk about the proper direct tax code.
आपने बात करी कि अगले 25 वर्ष का विजन ले रहा है बजट, एंड वी सी कि देयर इज अ थ्रेड ऑफ डिजिटलाइजेशन रनिंग थ्रू द एंटायर बजट. इवन एग्रीकल्चर में ड्रोन्स की बात हुई है, हर एक एरिया में टेक्नोलॉजी को यूज करने की बात हुई है, डिजिटल यूनिवर्सिटीज की बात हुई है, डिजिटल बैंकिंग को एक्सपैंड करने की बात हुई है. सो आपको लगता है कि ये एक जो स्टेप है डिजिटलाइजेशन का, दिस विल नेचुरली लीड टू वर्चुअस ग्रोथ साइकिल?
Yes, well, if I look at this budget in the terms of that broad vision, it is of course about capital investments, is about infrastructure, but it is essentially about connectivity. Connectivity of the physical kind as well as connectivity of the digital kind. And we have seen the gains. One only has to look at the dashboards. We have seen the kind of gains that digital connectivity has brought even to the poorer of sections of society. And I should mention, because this is sometimes not always known, that even when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, the present Prime Minister advocated the use of digitization and information technology. And yes, you're absolutely right that this budget does have an emphasis on use of the digital, because the digital is a great enabler. It removes the asymmetry of information, however you define it, between the relatively disadvantaged and the more advantaged. And there are any number of sectors where the use of this technology can be a great enabler to ensure empowerment for citizens, to ensure ease of living and ease of doing business also.
Dr. Debroy, earlier chief economist with PhD CCI, we asked him how satisfied the industry was, and he mentioned that from a supply side, he was reasonably satisfied. But from a demand side, he felt more things could be done. What, in your opinion, are the further things that could be done on the demand side?
Well, you would have to ask him. I would say that when people say demand, they have not changed their expectations. Their expectations are still based on the past. And what do I mean by that? They felt that, the budget should reduce the excise rate. And indirect taxes, by the way, are part of GST. The budget should increase the standard deduction, should reduce my rate. This is what people mean by demand. There are two problems with that. One is, if I have a concession for one sector, that is ad hoc, discretionary, and I'm distorting decisions. The more important point is, the multiplier benefits are far more from increasing public expenditure than from reducing taxes. So I think the best answer in terms of increasing demand is to ensure that the growth recovers.
मिस्टर देब्रॉय, एक जो आपने बहुत स्ट्रेस दिया है गति शक्ति पे बजट में, सड़कों को लेकर, एक्सप्रेसवेज को लेकर, रोपवेज को लेकर, कार्गो टर्मिनल्स को लेकर, so you feel कि that is also another way of building long-term sustainable development along with the multiplier effect?
Absolutely. And the point is, I do not know what the expression middle class means, but if they expect tax concessions, they are people who are paying taxes. Anything that I give to the so-called middle class is money that I cannot spend on Gati Shakti projects. So, if there is a trade-off, and I don't think there should be trade-off because the so-called middle class will also gain from the growth. But if there is a trade-off, my trade-off would be to ensure the Gati Shakti projects, the transport connectivity for every citizen, not just people who pay taxes.
And digital currency that has now become a reality, digital rupee, how do you see this development? ये कितना बड़ा एक हमारे जो financial sector के लिए या हमारे financial system के लिए कितनी बड़ी उपलब्धि आप कहेंगे?
I think this is very important in terms of enabling transactions. But I think the broader debate is, although the budget has not used that word, rightly so, the broader debate is about this so-called cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is not a currency at all. It is a financial asset. The trouble is, it cannot happen unregulated, because what one means by a crypto asset is also unclear. So I think what has been suggested in the form of a digital currency, spliced with the taxing of digital assets, is a very desirable move, moving towards some kind of regulation, not ban. Some countries have actually banned crypto, but not a ban, but some kind of regulation of this segment, which is a thriving segment. And I think eventually we will see that regulation manifesting itself, not necessarily, of course, through the budget.
Dr. Debroy, one more thought about the disinvestment. The number that was initially planned, the number we have come up with is much lower than that. How do you see that privatization stroke disinvestment moving forward?
I will not quibble about the difference between privatization and disinvestment. Privatization technically means when I'm handing over the entire entity, all of the equity, not just dilution of equity. Air India is an example of that. There is, of course, the national pipeline. If I look at the figure of 65,000 crores, which is the target, I don't think that is excessively high. In fact, all the budget numbers are fairly cautious. Even that nominal rate of growth of 11.1%, I personally think will get more than that. But the budget has been conservative, and the 65,000 crores disinvestment figure, I think, is eminently achievable.
Dr. Debroy, the economic survey talked about the importance of safety net of welfare measures for the poor and the marginalized. Where does the budget stand on that?
No, the budget also mentions it. The finance minister mentioned it. And this is primarily in the form of ensuring physical infrastructure, financial inclusion, social infrastructure. I would quickly mention something else that the budget mentions, and it's extremely important, which is the land records part of it. Because land is fundamentally a state subject. Many of the problems are associated with the unsatisfactory state of land records. So this is how I would implement this welfareism, which is empowering citizens so that they do not any longer need doles.
Another issue of involving states in the process of development. 1 lakh crore rupees have been kept for FY23 for Gati Shakti program, and 10,000 crore grant which was given to states in the form of investment assistance, that has been increased to 15,000 crore. So you feel that states coming on board is a very important aspect of Gati Shakti's implementation?
Yes, of course, because you see, look, all growth essentially has to be driven by states. Land is completely a state subject. Labor is on the concurrent list, but much of the implementation of labor laws is a state subject. So in terms of what economists call the factor markets, most of it is in the province of the states. We already have a phenomenal decision-making process that involves the union government and the state governments, which the finance minister also already mentioned in the context of the GST Council. I think by the same token, we need stronger coordination between the union government and the states.
And another aspect which we would like your opinion on is the capital investment, the multiplier effect. How do you see this virtuous cycle of jobs, demand and investment? How do you see it solving this problem of job creation, which a lot of, you can say, critics have been citing?
Well, the problem of job creation is not a new problem. It has been accentuated by the pandemic. And there are all kinds of problems associated with the labor market. There are problems of lack of correlation between skills and education. There is the problem of the inefficient way that labor markets function, the geographical mismatch between where the demand for jobs is and where the supply of jobs is. So all of that. There is also the issue that particularly so far as urban unorganized sector labor is concerned, we don't know who they are. The Interstate Migrant Workers Act of 79 was never implemented. It is only now that through Labour Ministry's portal, we are getting some kind of registration, which is not mandatory. It is people registering themselves. So before one does anything for the labour market, one has to resolve these issues. Part of it, of course, is that employment always reacts with a time lag. And when there is growth, the employment is bound to happen. The employment may not be as much as we want it to, but as soon as there is growth, some amount of job creation is certain to happen.
Dr. Debroy, there's this upcoming MPC between 7th to 9th February, just a week away from now. RBI will have a dilemma with regarding the rate hike, and the bond markets have also moved already in that direction. How do you see the yields and the rates moving?
You see, if I look at the inflation rate today, depends of course on how I'm defining the inflation rate. But if I look at the inflation rate, it is within the MPC bounds. I should also mention that many of the elements that have contributed to the present inflation, they are not amenable to monetary policy instruments. Food inflation, and economic survey documented some of this. It's not really amenable to monetary policy instruments. I would only stick my neck out and say that so far I do not see inflation as a great concern. I think it will be transitory. I am much more concerned about ensuring that we return to a high growth trajectory.
Dr. Debroy, we see a pleasant surprise that there's a lot of stress which has been made on urbanization, on urban planning. How do you see this?
You see, a lot of the things that this government has done is actually for the rural sector. For example, the SECC Rural has been used in a large number of government schemes. This budget also talks about the various welfare measures for the rural sectors, including the tap connections, etc. The fact of the matter is that in the process, sometimes not enough has been done on the urban side. So I think it's a welcome recognition in the budget that we need to have a better form of urban planning.
Dr. Debroy, this is a great budget that seeks to build an open, digital and inclusive India with a Amrit Kaal, a 25-year vision. And thank you so much for joining us live on All India.
Thank you.
You were listening to an exclusive interview with Dr. Bibek Debroy, Chairman, Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.